Right. So let me check if it is on recording. Okay, there we are. Okay, so I was talking about how do we differentiate between the three terms, test, assessment, and evaluation. So coming to evaluation, evaluation is a kind of a broader term, right? Now, how is evaluation different from assessment is, assessment is basically related to the students, okay? Um, assessment is done of the learners only, but evaluation is an umbrella term. You can evaluate the students, you can evaluate the instructors, and you can evaluate the course, but you cannot assess the course. Okay, you can assess the students, right? So the broadest term or the umbrella term is evaluation, and everything else, assessment, tests, they might be synonyms to this term, but they lie under it. Okay, so evaluation is a broader term. That's why uh, when we are assessing different things, we use the word evaluation. Okay, so what we are doing is we are going to talk about how can we interpret while we are inferring the results that we get from evaluation, and what are the markers through which we can evaluate. Okay, so we would be doing course evaluation later on, but right now, as we define assessment also through the learners, so we would try to talk about evaluation in terms of students' performance and what are the markers that might be used for evaluating them. Okay. So before we move on, there are a few lines that I would like to read out. This you can see in front of you on the screens. Okay. So evaluation is synonym for assessment, which can apply to learners, but it is also used more broadly, even in the context where tests are not utilized. So you will find some authors writing about summative and formative assessments of learners, and other writing about summative and formative evaluation of learners. On the other hand, when it comes to instructor, administrator, courses, programs, the usual practice is to talk about instructor, administrator, and course program evaluation. So that's the difference I was talking about, okay? So we can evaluate learners with a formative assessment using a multiple choice, and also evaluate ESP program with a summative assessment based on a survey, right? So this is basically the difference. Everything in ESP can be evaluated, but everything and everyone in ESP cannot be assessed. Okay, so assessment is related to the learners. Learners can be evaluated as well, but evaluation is basically related to, you know, the course programs and the overall evaluation of these programs, whereas students can also be evaluated. So next we are trying to talk about some of the established criteria or the established markers through which we can evaluate the learners. Okay, now there are two ways, okay, or two set patterns or two established ways of evaluating the students. And as teachers, sometimes we are asked to adopt a particular kind of evaluation, and sometimes we are free to choose between the two. But then there are some international testing services or some international language tests which make use of either. Okay, because the test is designed so. right? So the first one is norm referenced evaluation and the other is criterion reference evaluation. Now, this norm reference evaluation is related to comparing students with one another. Okay. We do not set a particular criteria, right? That the student should have this much of proficiency or competence in the language, only then she would be promoted to the next level or she would get a passing grade, right? What we do is we compare the performance of one student with the other students or with the rest of the students. So we set a marker or a criteria according to the performance of that particular class. Okay. For instance, if the students, most of the students are below average, some are average students, the class is not a very really good class with a lot of above average or excellent students. Now what happens in norm referenced evaluation, because their performance is being compared with one another, so a certain level is not set that they should reach this level of proficiency, only then they would be promoted to the next level or they would be graded this way. So they are graded in comparison to each other. Okay. But the criteria that is internationally followed, and that sounds to be a fairer one, is criterion referenced evaluation. A certain criteria is set, okay, whosoever, without being compared to the other class fellow in the same group, whosoever reached that particular criteria gets through. Okay, this is what happens in the international tests like Ielts, like GRE, like TOEIC, all of these. Okay, so what happens is, you have to score a certain band. Whatever other class fellows are doing, they would be checked with the same criteria, but their marks would not be compared with you. Okay, if the whole class is not performing well, so we become flexible as teachers, right? And if the class is performing really well, then the competition becomes really tough. In the norm reference evaluation, there is a competition. Okay, whereas in criteria reference evaluation, there is a certain criteria, whosoever reaches that criteria clears the test. And that's the international standard on which all of these tests like TOEFL and IELTS and Pearson test, all of these are based. Okay. Now, what else I would like you to learn from interpreting of the results is to know about these tests and to know about the abbreviations also. Now, all of these tests are language tests, which are taken when you are trying to get in scholarship, when you are applying for a scholarship or when you are applying to study abroad, then you take one of these tests. Depending on the country you're applying in and depending on the course, the university maybe. So I would like you to, know about these tests, especially their abbreviation. Now this TOEFL, it stands for, and it is usually for the USA, it stands for Test of English as a Foreign Language, right? Then IELTS stands for, you should know if people ask you. That's why I'm interested that within this topic, beside knowing the interpreting results that you get from evaluation, norm referenced and criterion reference, I'm really interested that you learn these. Okay. The International English Language Testing System, this is Ielts. This is for the UK and the other English speaking countries other than America. Okay, it is valid for Canada, it is valid for Australia, it is valid for, of course, the UK, right? Then there is Pearson test of English. This is less popular in our country, and this is for the business people. Okay, and then there is test of English for international communication, TOEIC, right? Now this is perhaps the only test that is non-referenced. Okay, so the common ones in Pakistan, if you talk about our scenario, is TOEFL, in Ielts, and GRE, graduate record examination. I guess that's the abbreviation for. Okay, so learn these abbreviation. It's good. Being students of TOEFL, ESP, you should be well acquainted with these abbreviations and with this the name of the test, right? Okay, now let's talk about the 3 characteristics of effective evaluation. How can you make evaluation effective? Okay, because it is important that evaluation is time consuming. I told you it takes a lot of resources to evaluate the learners as well as the course. So everyone who is doing this evaluation would want it to be effective, right? So let's see what are some of the terms and what are some of the characteristics that we use in order to define the effectiveness of evaluation. Okay, so there are 3 terms that we use. One is reliability, the other is validity, the third is practicality. Now these are the terms that you use in research also when you are talking about the data, and it's reliability, validity, and then practicality. And these are the terms that you must have come across while we were doing the needs analysis. Okay, now what is reliability? Reliability of any results, okay, it really shows that your results are reliable if in the same circumstances you conduct the same kind of a test, not exactly the same test, the same kind of a test with the same level of students, then you get the same results. If you or anyone of your friends is conducting a similar test with their students, and if they're getting the same results, that means that the test is reliable. Okay, so your evaluation becomes reliable when you're getting similar results in similar circumstances. Okay, now there are of course ways to increase the reliability of an evaluation, right? You cannot declare a test not reliable because you have conducted it at a different level in a different situation, maybe with people of a different age group, different level of proficiency. So to make the test reliable, okay, or to check the reliability of these tests, you should be taking care of few things through which you can increase the reliability. Okay, and the first and the foremost step in increasing the reliability is to make things similar as much as possible, make factors similar as much as possible. So we would be looking at some of the factors that you can make similar to the previous one where the test was conducted, so that you can increase the reliability. Chances are when test is taken in a similar situation with different people but of the same level, age, maybe background, proficiency levels. So they would get the same scores as their seniors. By seniors, I mean like people who have already taken that test, right? Okay. So what are the ways through which you can increase the reliability? You can conduct equivalent evaluation under the same condition as I told you. Test duration should be the same. If you have conducted one test for 3 hours, the other test for which you are checking its reliability should be 3 hours. Okay. Room environment, it cannot be that at one time the students were very comfortable taking the test and at another time you were unable to provide them such an environment and you are still trying to get the same results, right? The assessment format should be unambiguous. If you have asked the students to maybe attempt this many questions, the format or the pattern should remain the same. It is not that exactly the same test should be reproduced to get the same results. Similar kind of a test. Okay, you may change the question. For instance, you keep the same format. Previously, you gave multiple choice questions, but changing the question, but still the question remain multiple choice. Okay, and the level of the question should be the same. Instructions should be clear. Okay, assessment takers by number instead of names to avoid familiarity, uh, gender, age, nationality, race, and other biases. Okay, so you should give numbers to the students instead of giving them names. Grading rubrics होने चाहिए. What are rubrics? Yes, what do you mean by rubrics? Let's see who is still up. What do you mean by rubrics? Go to your chats. Yes, what are rubrics? We are talking about exams. So rubrics are basically the criteria, marking criteria, or the rules for marking. So I was giving you an example that in our university we have rubrics for checking of thesis. Why we have made these rubrics? We have made these rubrics because previously we used to have a lot of students who were doing this thesis. So it was impossible for a single teacher to check. Okay, so when it goes to different teachers and who are assessing, so if the criteria is the same, if we have provided them proper rubrics, then the chances are that the evaluation has a reliability. Okay, as I was giving you example, if I am marking my student or one of the students for abstract out of 5, and another teacher says that the abstract is written wonderfully, so I should give her more than 5 marks and I should assess her out of 10. So she wouldn't do that because she is already provided with the rubrics in order to improve the reliability of evaluation basically. Okay, so this is the grading rubrics. Now we need to ensure that those who are taking these assessments should be familiar with the format, with the type of questions and the grading rubrics. Okay, so if the students are familiar with all of these things, they would increase the reliability. So this can include multiple items that independently measure different aspects of the target area. So that really depends, what whatever you have taught them, you would be including it in the paper. That would improve the reliability. So limit the freedom of assessment takers to interpret and respond to assessment item. That means the more objective questions are in the paper, the more would be the reliability of evaluation. Okay, because as we define objective papers or objective assessments as being less influenced or as being not influenced by the feelings, ideas, opinions, biases of the grader. So, if we limit the freedom of assessment takers as far as the answering of question is concerned, this would greatly increase the reliability of evaluation. So, the students or the assessment takers should understand the importance and the value of this test and should complete it. Okay, so the length of the test is also important. If previously the test was short and this time the test is long and the students cannot complete it, then there are questions on the reliability. Okay, the time should be similar and the length of the paper should be the same. And one thing that can help it greatly is making the paper objective. Okay, so less chances of any kind of subjectivity. The marking should be in a consistent way, and this can happen wonderfully well if the paper is objective. But of course, there are times and there are language features, there are language elements that cannot be checked objectively. For instance, writing skills. Writing skills cannot be assessed or evaluated objectively. So there, of course, the whole paper cannot be objective, but objectivity in the paper increases the reliability again. Uh, Otherwise, you need to have subjective questions also, but try to adopt these things, these measures, so as to increase the reliability. Okay, now here is an example of what I just talked about the essay writing. We'd just read it quickly and then we would move to validity. Okay, now as an example, in an EAP setting, if you were evaluating the essay writing ability of learners in different sections of a course using a graded essay test, you would want to make sure that the test took place at the same point in the course. Okay, if you are asking them to write an essay in their midterm, so in the next class you are doing the same. You are not going to give them an essay in the final term because you have given them more time to improve. Theoretically, you have given them more time to improve, so it might affect the reliability of the test. If one class is writing an essay in their midterms and the other class is allowed time for the whole session and they are writing an essay in the final. You would also want to make sure learners were given the same amount of time to complete the test and the instructions were equivalent. You may not be able to use the same essay prompts in each class, but you would want to use prompts that produce writing of a similar level or complexity and depth. This is what I was telling you, that this reliability does not mean that you give this exactly the same test paper to the other students. Okay, but the level and the complexity of the paper should be very, very similar, right? So you would also need to make sure that the learners are familiar with the format, and we have done this. Okay, please guys, one thing I would like to mention here is my lectures are no substitute for the readings, and readings are no substitute for the lectures maybe. So I would highly and strongly suggest and recommend you to not leave the class once the session is over. If you're not moving to another class, do give everything a reading the same day. The topics that we cover in the lecture, your duty is to give the whole topic a reading. Okay, because the lecture is a lecture, and we might add few points, but we might miss some points that you will find in your books. Okay, so let's talk about um, the reliability in the case of EOP. Okay, and EAP also. In EAP, reliability becomes easier because we have similar kind of things. We are dealing with similar kinds of writing patterns and curriculum and instructions. So we already are with the rubrics. So getting good reliability or a high reliability when it comes to teaching of English for academic purposes and testing of English for the same things are easy. But what happens in EOP setting when we are teaching, testing, and evaluating the professionals, and we are teaching them English for occupational purposes, then things become a little different because we are designing EOP for different professions, right? So we cannot provide them the same environment all the while. And similarity of many of the other factors do not match as they quickly and closely match in EAP settings. Okay, so what kind of changes there might be in EOP setting from one set of students and one set of papers? They might include the number of the students would be different. Then the general proficiencies, needs of the learners, classroom environment, the time available for evaluation, and even the manner in which the evaluation is conducted. Okay. Now, for example, in a business training seminar or negotiation, the performance of the learner might be evaluated through observation, interaction during a role play, right? Unless this video was video recorded, it would be impossible to use the evaluation as a model later in the training sessions. Okay, so see, you go to one bank to teach EOP to the bankers, and then you evaluate, and then you move to another bank in another city. See, the profession remains the same, but your situation has changed. The people role played, and if you do not have the video recording of those role plays, then of course you cannot make a similar test and they cannot be evaluated. This might uh, decrease the reliability of the test for the second time, right? It is not easy to maintain reliability in EOP environment. One thing you can do is work with the administration team to know ahead of time what variations you might encounter. Okay, you can reduce the variations, but of course you cannot eliminate them completely. Okay, so this is related to reliability. How can you increase the reliability? How reliability attainment is easier in EAP setting and not really easy in EOP environment. And we have done the reasons for it. For tomorrow, I would like you to read whatever we have done till now. Other than that, I would also like you to read this validity and practicality. Now, this session is also about to end, so can you stop the recording?